What is up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, back at it again. This is the IDP Army Podcast, where we are talking mostly IDP, all fantasy football. If it's your first time on the show or catching the show, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you stick around with us. If it's not, welcome back. Make sure you smash the subscribe button, the follow button, smash, like, all that stuff, thumbs up, blah, blah, blah. You know all that. We're on all the platforms, Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, all that good stuff. So we're where you want us to be. Appreciate y'all being here again. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. That would help the show out a lot. All right, that was a long-winded intro. I'm here with some guests today, guys. It's not just me. I won't just have to ramble on. We're talking real talk, truth about 2020 IDP DLs. I got my guys here, Jorge Andrews, and I got Nate Marcum of Fantasy and Frames. Boys, how you doing?
Dude, Jordan, thank you very much for having us on, man. We've been looking forward to this for a very long time. We love your work. We're big fans of IDP 123 and the push you're making it to make it a the default scoring setting for a lot of places. And just so you know, and all the fans know, all the IDP content that you're going to be seeing from us here at Fantasy and Frames, we will be including IDP scoring when we're doing our analysis on IDP players, because we think it is a valid scoring metric, and it should be. It's one of those I really think it should be included in a lot more platforms.
Yeah, number one, thanks for having us, Jordan. Nice chatting with you finally in person. Besides going through the Twitter sphere, but to back up what Jorge was saying, I think the one area that people get totally confused and scared and intimidated, I'm using those words because I want to make people feel guilty for not jumping on the IDP train. And if you insult people, usually that's a good way to get them to come aboard. But no, so what I mean is that if you have 20 different scoring formats, there's no consistency. And with that, what happens is it's hard to bounce from place to place, and you just eventually get fed up. And I mean, dude, come on. We know offenses, they can make that claim and say, oh, look how many scoring settings and scoring formats there are for offense. Really, are there really? There's pretty much about 3 standard. You can manipulate. You have standard,
contextualize, always contextualize, but they start somewhere. Everybody has a cornerstone. There's a cornerstone to every league scoring system that makes sense, or it did once upon a time, looking at UPPR or standard scoring over there. But things change. The fantasy is evolving year after year, and it's unfortunate that IDP is so far behind all these years later, but we're out here repping. I appreciate what you guys are doing, talking offense and defense. We do that here too. I go on a Josh Allen tangent once or twice an episode. Nice. That happens. TJ or Patrick Mahomes, I go on tangents. I love my offensive guys, but we represent the defense here. TJ Watt hopefully gets that defensive player of the year. But guys, how long have you guys been playing IDP? I'll share something with y'all. I've only been playing IDP like 3 years. I haven't, this is kind of a, scary thing. I haven't really told the IDP Army, but, I'm not like a 10-year IDP veteran. I'm kind of new to the scene. And that's kind of why I view this stuff so passionately, is because when I came in, these are the issues that I saw, and I saw that they were problems, and it's what kept me from playing IDP 5 years ago when I started playing fantasy, 10 years ago, whatever it was, because it didn't make sense. I looked at it and I was like, I just don't get this. I joined in and I got into a league that was half decent, and I was like, all right, I want to play in another one. The next league I joined was so completely different. The value of players was so everything was different. And I was like, this is crazy. And I joined another one and another one. And about my 6th IDP league, I realized, oh my gosh, like there is no through line to this. And that's when I and I've been looking for an in into the fantasy community, because everybody talks offense. And I was like, this is a real need. This is, and I offered a solution. That's what IDP 123 is. And a lot of people are adopting it. I like to say, let the market decide if it's worth it or not. I think the market is speaking. I think there's going to be a lot more IDP 123 leagues coming up soon. I thank you guys for endorsing it. Thank Dynasty Nerds for that. It is what it is at this point. That was last year, though. This year, my new thing is 0 DL. So we need to talk about some defensive line players. But before we get to that, Super Bowl predictions. And what do you guys think about this Tampa Bay defensive line? Because we're going to be talking about a couple of those guys soon.
Nate, you're the Chiefs fan here. Why don't you start with you?
Well, the defensive line aside for Tampa, my concern is the offensive line for KC. And we've had issues from the very beginning of the season when we've had opt-outs. I say we, like I'm part of the team, but I'm gonna say we. I believe Chiefs. I believe KC. You can see in the background that's the stadium. There we are. And so losing Eric Fisher is gonna be a concern. I really have to. I hope the number one key, if you want to slow down a defensive line and a pass rush outside of a good offensive line and a quarterback that's mobile, is a coach that puts your team in position to help offset that pressure. And Andy Reid, I know this is not the expected answer that people are going to get, but Andy Reid is the single most important thing to that pass rush, if you ask me. I think he's going to set up some plays where hopefully they have some draws, they have something set up that's going to put them in a position to keep Mahomes on his feet.
What do you think, Jorge?
Yeah, I think the loss of Eric Fisher is going to be a big one. I'm expecting Devin White to go off and just really they're going to use him in so many different ways, rushing the quarterback, playing in coverage, which he's not, I believe, so good in coverage, but he gets you those tackles. So who cares in terms of IDP scoring, right?
He's not coming off the field.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, that's for darn sure. No, I think they're going to do a better job of stopping Tyreek Hill from going for 200 yards in a quarter. I would be very surprised if they let that happen again.
You're taking the under on that, is what you're saying?
I'm not placing any bets.
I would place the under bet on 200 yards per quarter. I'm pretty safe.
Well, I guess that's a very good point. No, but I think Kansas City is going to find a way to pull this out. I think Andy Reid, like you just said, Nate, is the key to all this. That being said, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And you look at what happened towards the end of the last game they played each other. Tampa kind of climbed back in there. In Kansas City, they weren't in any danger of losing that game. I think they just kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit at that point. But Tampa found a way. Here's the thing. In that game, Tampa wasn't clicking on all cylinders yet. Now they are. Now, if they can get Antonio Brown back, that's something else. He was starting to click on all cylinders towards the end of the season. I really see this Buccaneers offense giving Kansas City fits. The question really is, how much of an impact can this this Tampa Bay defense have on Kansas City? Yeah. And this losing the left tackle is not a small thing for Kansas City.
My take, which is kind of a take, is I think Tom Brady's taking it home again. I love Patrick Mahomes more than anything in the world, but look at what Tom Brady just did. It's like we're numb to it. But he's surrounded by superstars: Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, number 4 overall pick. Say what you want, okay? He's got a great offensive coach. He's got a great defensive coach. He's got 2 of the best pass rushers in the league. He's got Ndamukong Suh. They just drafted Winfield. This team is stout. Levante David, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. Devin White, who's blowing it up. This team is a team. The Chiefs are a great offense, and I love the Chiefs defense, but the Chiefs defense it's like a playmaking defense. They can't stop people from scoring, but they can make Frank Clark is only useful when you absolutely 100% have to make a play. Then he makes a play. That's what Frank Clark does. It's 4th down, the game's on the line, get him out of field goal range, and then he shows up. He won't put another stat on the board the whole game. Honey Badger's kind of the same way this year. He only shows up when it matters. And that scares me against Tom Brady because it's going to matter every single drive. So my take is, and I hate to say this, I think Tom Brady is going to go win the Super Bowl. And I think he's going to pat Mahomes on the butt. I think he's going to walk out of there, big dick energy, and he's going to retire. And that's that. So I hate to say that as a Chiefs fan, but you got to pay homage to the OG, the GOAT, and Tom Brady. It's unreal. So
it's going to be a show for sure. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it'll be, and that's the thing. It's going to be fireworks on both. It's going to be offense and defensive fireworks. Shaq Barrett, who we're going to talk about, and we're about to get to IDP Army. We just want to, chop it up with these guys real quick, and Jason Pierre-Paul. You guys saw that game last Sunday. They put Aaron Rodgers on the ground a lot. And that was no easy task. He is, and and Mahomes too is a little banged up. He got turf toe. You know what I mean? That's not, that's what when we were watching this game last Saturday or Sunday, I was like, man, I told my wife, I was like, he's hurt. Don't let them fool you. Mahomes is in this game. I was like, he's going in this game hurt. His foot is hurt. I was like, he's still going to win. I was like, but they won't talk about how he's hurt right now. He's hurt. So.
I don't think anybody expected them to come in and actually handle Buffalo as easily as it appeared. And there were certain instances where Mahomes had that foot actually kind of plant toe first on some of those I don't want to call them design runs because none of those were designed, but some of the scrambles, if you want to call it that, and he he played through it. If there's one positive I'll take, is that turf toe, as difficult to play through, typically situations like that, there's lingering effects, and you see that. So luckily, I'm optimistic that I maybe think the turf toe is not as bad, even though it's tough to say a gradient scale of turf toe. Is turf toe or not? There's no grade 2 strain like a knee strain or an MCL, but he played through. So I'm what's up, Hollywood?
Yeah, it'll be something. It'll be one for the ages. I mean, Patrick Mahomes should be going to his 3rd Super Bowl right now. Like, we all know that. So, all right, we were going to talk DL draft strategy at the front end of the show. I kind of want, we're 10 minutes in. I want to kind of hop into some of these players, and maybe we'll get to that towards the end instead. So, guys, gals, again, thanks for joining. Hit like, hit subscribe. Appreciate you being here. I got Jorge, I got Nate with me. We're going to talk the top 12 defensive linemen of 2020. Just for some parameters, this is going to be based on IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Setting the table here. This is going to be sleeper designations. So there's going to be some pass rush outside linebackers for you purists out there that are going to be mentioned here. And if it bothers you, just put your earmuffs on. It's going to be okay. Okay. So we're going to start with one of those, and it's TJ Watt, number 1, 4th season in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, played 15 games, 307 points in IDP 1-2-3 scoring, 213.3 if you're on Fantasy Pros. I'm going to give them a little shout out. 33 impact plays, which I'm going to quickly go over impact plays with y'all. An IDP 1-2-3 scoring, an impact play is any play that is over 3 points. That is going to be your forced fumble, fumble recovery, pass defended, safety, block, kick. That is also going to be your tackle for loss because it's going to stack with a solo tackle. So it'll be a net 4-point play, sacks, interceptions, and touchdowns. Go read the article on Dynasty Nerds. There's a whole thing outlining why it is the way it is. Go read the pinned tweet on my Twitter. But so he had 33 impact plays, big deal. Led the league in sacks, 15. Led the league in tackles for loss, 23. 3rd season in the NFL. With 7 or more pass breakups, which are one of my favorite auxiliary stats to talk about. Guys, I guess we'll start with you, Jorge. What are your thoughts on TJ Watt this season and going forward? And then Nate, and then we'll circle back up to me.
Sure.
One of the things when I was looking at this top 12 list, and then I was looking specifically at TJ Watt, so many dual designation players, this edge rusher category that I think should be more common in IDP leagues and more of like the norm than the exception. A player like TJ Watt, like you just rattled off all those stats. Like, he can do everything, whether it's sacking the quarterback like a defensive lineman, whether it's playing in coverage, getting those passes defense. Like, I like to call these players like the Swiss Army knives of defenses. And I really think this is actually great for defensive linemen in terms of from a fantasy football standpoint, because now you're getting more variability. Now you can start deciding, okay, should I go 0 DL like you were talking about earlier? Can I get better value at a LB 3 or 4, right? That would traditionally be an LB 3 or 4, but be a defensive lineman 1, be a defensive lineman 2. Like, this cross switching of roles between a defensive lineman and a linebacker, this hybrid position, I think does wonders. And look, TJ Watt is a beast. He's gonna. I watched your last podcast episode where you talk about linebackers. This guy, he should win a ring with Pittsburgh. He is the Pittsburgh defense. They should build around him. He is great for fantasy football. He can get you fantasy points in so many different ways. Like, I would be very surprised if he did not win, like you said, Defensive Player of the Year this year. And as far as going into next year, you could make the argument he should be the first IDP player off the board.
Make the argument. I thought that's what we all believed. I thought I convinced people. Oh man.
He went in the most recent IDP dynasty startup that we did. He did go number 1. So
that's
it is gaining traction. When you weren't in it, so you couldn't pick number 1 to take it.
Early adopter.
You took him in our league that we're in together, one of the dynasty leagues.
Yeah, I took him last year, number 1 over. Was it number 1 overall or number 2?
1 or 2.
Remember, I won the league.
At the top. Yeah.
Pat on the back.
We know you won the league, Jordan.
One of the only leagues I won. Okay, no money, so it's not as great as it seems. But I still felt good beating you guys. Love you though.
You should. There's something to be said about some pride. I like money more than pride, but at the same time, it's a little bit closer.
That was a tough league. That was, there were some sharks, and they were busy boys in there, but when you draft like a king, when you draft TJ Watt and Roquan Smith, I mean, what can they do?
But who saw that coming from Roquan Smith? Like that, I didn't expect him to have that top. Really? Come on. You saw him being
top 5
linebacker?
I'm going to stick to the company line. Yep.
So I'm gonna piggyback off of everything Jorge was saying about TJ Watt. And, and I look at the one thing that I really, really like, and especially with that number 1 pick, is the consistency that you've even mentioned with him. If you go back 2 years, he has 3 games where he scored less than 10 points. Yeah. So I mean, it's the consistent play is always a motivator. The one question I have going forward for you guys, maybe the loss, I'm assuming Bud Dupree's gone. I don't think that they're going to bring Bud Dupree back. What impact does that have on TJ Watt? I don't think any, personally, because I think we've seen Pittsburgh this year with every loss they've had was a plug and play and keep doing their thing. But I'm interested to hear what you two think if losing Bud Dupree has any ancillary effect on TJ whatsoever.
I'll let you go, Jorge, and then I will close this out on Watt, and we will roll on through.
This is what makes him such a this is what makes him so good for an IDP play. Let's say they start, the offensive line starts blocking him from getting to the quarterback. Okay, you know what? He's going to get you tackles and passes defense that way. He's going to find a way to compensate for whatever he's lacking because of the lack of Bud Dupree on the other side. But like you said, Nate, it was literally, plug and play. Like Robert Spillane became a thing, and we were hyping Robert Spillane for a good chunk of the season until he got hurt before the Washington game. So I feel very confident no matter who's playing opposite of TJ Watt, he's going to get his. Most importantly, he's going to get you your fantasy points and help you come out with a victory, hopefully each week when you're starting him.
Amen. That's kind of how I view it too. Bud Dupree before last year, we weren't really talking about him as if he was anything special. And I was on Watt coming into last season. We knew Watt was going to be special. You could already kind of see it in this play. And I'm looking at the notes here I sent you guys, but excluding his rookie season, averaging, basically 4 tackles a game, 3 of those being solo. that's a great floor for a defensive lineman. 0.9 sacks a game. 1.9 impact plays a game, 2 quarterback hits a game. So, essentially he's averaging around 21 fantasy points per game in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, just to give you an idea of what that means. Like the top end players, Darius Leonard's crazy year 2 years ago, he averaged 24. So, Watt since that same time is basically averaging 21. So, it is what it is. People are catching on finally, and that makes me very happy. And he deserves all the respect that he's finally getting as a linebacker or a defensive line player. Number 1 overall IDP, and I think he's going to be fine no matter what. That they're a defensive team. They have guys. There's guys there. Highsmith's coming up. I really like him. Cam Hayward, Tuitt are still going to be there. Bud Dupree, we'll see what happens with him. So
they traded for Avery Williamson last year too. So
so their linebacking core, they got pieces there. I'm not too worried about TJ Watt. He's, like I said, he's my number 1 IDP asset. I'm taking him pretty much in every startup draft I'm in. If he's in the 6th round on sleeper, I'm taking him 6th, 7th round. I will take him. I'm fine making him. Usually I'm a little timid about being the first person to take an IDP player, but if I'm in a spot and I know this is where it's happening and he hasn't gone, I'm not scared to take him either, because every draft I've been in, which aren't many, because I don't let this happen, where I don't get him, I die on the inside. It hurts me. And then that person who I'm in there with knows that I'm dying. I want him so bad. So I just don't let it happen.
There you go.
That's how I deal with it. All right, number 2 on the season, 6th season in the league, Zadarius Smith, 2nd year on this top. I believe, I don't know where he finished last year exactly. I actually have all this information.
He was 7th in 2019. Yeah.
Nice. All right. What do we got here? Let me see who he is. This is from last. Oh, I have him as 5 right here, but that's probably a little bit different from what we had. Again, that's the thing with IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, because I'm the only person who really curates this stuff. I try to tell people, look at this, look at that, but we're all kind of, again, the IDP community, the misinformation where we're not all on the same level, and that kind of hurts, but we're working on that. We're sharing stuff with each other. We're in that, that beta league together where we're looking at stuff. So, I think, more voices harmonizing together, is what's going to make a difference there. But back to Zadarius, top 5 finish last year, number 2 this year. Crazy that the Ravens just let him go to Green Bay, and they didn't really even play him when he was there as a full-time pass rusher. He popped on a per-snap basis, played 16 games this year, 233 points, 20 impact plays, 12 and a half sacks. I'll share my screen here with you guys again real quick so we can look at his actual season production. Similar-ish type of breakdown here to Watt, which you love to see. I mean, if your season breaks down similarly to the best player in the league, that's a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we got 75 points on sacks, 30% of solos. He's only like, 28? What do you guys think about him? We saw him play this last week too. I mean, it shows you that an elite edge rusher does make a difference. I mean, look at the teams that made it to the playoffs. We had the Steelers, we had the Browns, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we have Zadarius Smith and the Green Bay Packers. I mean, it makes it, the Rams. I mean, almost every guy on this list, except for Leonard Williams, made it to the playoffs. And JJ Watt, RIP, bro.
I know. Man, I hope he goes somewhere good.
I feel bad for
I hope he goes to Pittsburgh and all the Watt brothers are united.
Dude.
They form Voltron and they go crazy.
Dude, yes.
Imagine that. Talking about Zadarius. So, I think the last 2 years, the one thing, I'm using the word compiler, not as a negative necessarily, but playing 32 games has consistently helped. If you look at what he's done, he's double teamed probably at, want to say the second most of any edge rusher in the NFL. He has a decent win rate. It's not elite, but it's decent. And so playing enough is consistently helping, of course. And I know that sounds so simple and stupid, but at the same time, obviously, you want to be on the field. Another key aspect, if you ask me, is it kind of drives by the offense. And if they can add, I've seen reports that Will Fuller might go there next year. If you get the same Aaron Rodgers and same offense, the best way to make an edge rusher successful, have a defense or have a team that you're playing have to be chasing points. And I think that might be another thing that works in his favor next year is I think this offense stays, I don't want to use the word elite, but I'm going to use the word elite for him.
High level.
Yeah, thank you.
Above average. As long as they're playing sub 500 teams, they're going to be elite.
And in that division, that's not too difficult.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned sub average. When we're talking about looking at it from a total points scoring, just looking at linebackers, he falls into the LB3 in terms of scoring points between the linebackers 25 through 36. You can totally wait on Zadarius Smith in your drafts. Okay, and plug him in as not your linebacker 1 or 2, but as your DL 1. Like it just tells you again, we're hammering home here. Edge defenders have to matter. Like this is how you make these players more valuable. You don't make defensive linemen valuable, then what's the point of having them in there? You get your 4 or 5, and then you're done. Like that's just stupid. Like let's make these players mean something for all of us to cheer. Like the more we're cheering on these players, the more we're invested.
Yeah. And to do that, you have to have two things. I mean, you have to score the plays that matter. You can't just score sacks and tackles. I mean, that's too binary. That's too reductive. And that can't be all you talk about in your analysis. But to have anything else to talk about, you have to what? You have to have, a set of rules. We're building a world here. We're playing a game. We have to have rules, standards, a board. Let's set a board up. What are the rules? What are the score of this action? And you have to weight those actions appropriately. I don't want to throw shade at fantasy pros, but my big issue with their scoring system is a pass deflection is 1.5. That's the same as a solo tackle. A solo tackle happens beyond the line of scrimmage. It could happen 40, 50 yards down the field. You know what I mean? And that means the ball has gone that far down the field. That sucks. That shouldn't be rewarded the same as a play that if a pass gets thrown 50 yards down the field and gets batted away, that stop the line of scrimmage is still 50 yards that way, not 50 yards that way. So why is it the same? It doesn't make any sense. And it's just, and that's in IDP, that's part of the reason people don't have fun when they're seeing it. The first league I was in, I think a sack was 2 points. And I remember when I first realized that, because I was so hyped. I was like, yes, I jumped up and down. I looked at my phone because I didn't know the scoring system. So my first IDP league, I got 2 points. I about broke my phone. I about beat the TV in. I was like, are you kidding me? I've been sitting here on the edge of my seat waiting for the sack, which I just assumed would be worth 6, 7, 8 points because I know they didn't happen very often. I got 2 points. Oh, I was so mad. And I was like, went in the league chat. I was like, why is this happening, Bob? They're like, dude, chill. This is just how it is. And I'm like, why are people okay with this? And here I am rambling about it yet again.
and you created your own system, which is catching like fire. And that's what, that's what innovators do, and it's a credit to you and it's a credit to the scoring system. And
appreciate it.
The thing is, it needs to happen. It needs to happen. We can't just keep doing this whole appease people to try and get into IDP.
And who are we trying to appease? That's where I was
going with that. Sorry to cut you off. Mm-hmm. That's exactly where I was going with it. Are we appeasing these people who don't play IDP to join IDP? Or are we trying to
I don't
people who are IDP people?
Exactly. Those people don't need me. That's not who I'm here for. I'm not here for a 14, 15-year grizzled IDP veteran in a 40-year running MFL league. He doesn't need me. You know who needs me? The guy who joined the league, drunk at homecoming and has his draft tomorrow and has never played IDP before. That guy needs help. Where does he get that help? A 40-year grizzled IDP veteran, he's going to be talking jargon you've never heard. So we got to reduce that down to something simple. And then we just got to feed it to the masses and then let it grow from there. So
break it down and then build it back up and build it up the way that
makes sense.
Exactly. And I mean, it sounds simple. But that's the crazy thing is you asked us early on how long we've been playing IDP. And this is realistically probably my 25th year of playing fantasy football. And my first year of doing anything more than just dabbling. You accidentally get in an IDP league when you sign up. You're like, shit, I didn't realize that. All right, I need one defensive lineman and one linebacker. And you don't take any because you realize in the middle of the season you can just plug and play because there's no real strategy to not, all you need is somebody with an LB or DL1. Jorge, on the other hand, has played for a lot longer. I listen to what he has to say. And then I am like I don't want to call it a sponge with this.
You are a sponge. Let's be real.
But you know what? I'm a sponge that doesn't soak up a bunch of bullshit scoring and a bunch of bullshit situations. Sorry for the language and all, but
that's fine. I cuss all the time.
It has to make sense to me, and I realize. Am I going to say IDP 123 is the single only best thing ever? I don't know yet. But I'm going to say I like where it's going and I like the sounds of it. It makes it easier for me when I have to explain why something is the way it is and I have a basis, something structured. I like structure. I like structure a lot.
That's a good point. And to piggyback off that, sorry for interrupting. As content creators, it's a lot easier for me to reference something that's more popular than to say, oh, well, using Timmy's home league scoring setting.
Right.
Not everybody's going to know Timmy's homepage scoring settings. Kudos to you for making your scoring settings at least public. People have to pay behind paywalls and stuff to find out what the scoring settings are for some places. It's crazy. We need something. We need a foundation.
It just makes sense.
What you do with the foundation from there, that's your business. But having some foundation to start off with, I think, is very important.
And I don't like to be, I kind of just going on a tangent right now. We're kind of just the whole show's gone completely sideways, IDP Army. But I don't like necessarily having to be viewed as the bad guy because I feel like a lot of people take what I say about scoring offensively, like I'm saying something against them. I'm not. I'm not against your customized scoring league. I'm not against true positions. I am not against people playing on MFL. But what I do understand and know is that most people like things simple. Most people don't want 4 or 5 or 6 barriers of entry. I don't want to learn 5 new positions, and each position has its own unique scoring rubric. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Show me where they do that on offense. It doesn't happen. Show me where an analyst is talking about premium scoring as the norm. It's not a thing. So why is it not just normalized? Why is it stigmatized to push for that to not be normal in IDP? I don't get it. So we are where we are. I pay homage to the guys who came here before me, but I also, I hate to say it, but you set this table, and it's kind of a mess and it just needs help. And I'm trying to help it. I want to help it. And I think IDP scoring 123, go check out the episode. You guys haven't read the article. It's just pragmatic. It just makes sense. It scales with PPR scoring, which is what's most important. Most people play PPR, and it makes all 3 positions relevant. Defensive line, they can reach the same scoring ceiling as offensive players. Linebackers can, and DBs can, all 3. So, yeah, That's why we're talking about IDP 1 through 3 scoring, and everybody who listens to the IDP Army podcast knows that because they've been listening to it for a while. And impact players are part of that. I mean, part of that too is the semantics around IDPs. We don't even all agree on what the scoring plays are, or how they're weighted. So I'm kind of like trying to build vocabulary around it too. Like, okay, we sacks and tackles. Okay, that's great. But what are these other plays called? Like, what do we group these other things that players do? I call them impact plays because they make the most impact on the field. They should count for the most points on your IDP team, too, because they're the most impactful plays. They move the line of scrimmage backwards or keep it from moving forwards. All tackles mean that the line of scrimmage has moved forward. The offense has progressed. That should be the lowest scoring thing. That makes sense to me. Everything else, if it's going backwards, it should be more. If it stops it from going forwards, if it's neutral, it should be more than whatever it was letting it go forward. And then the quarterback hits, that's really just to give points for pressures because, I mean, pressures are a weird thing to track, but a quarterback hit's a quarterback hit. You at least got there and made some sort of disruption. Give it 1 point, same as as an assist. We don't know the true merit of it on that given play, but it's worth counting. Make it real low, and that's a way to give people pressure. I call them pressure points. So I don't know. I'm just going crazy. If it catches on, awesome. Like I've said since the beginning, the market is deciding. A lot of people play in IDP 1, 2, 3 leagues, and that brings us to our third guy, IDP 1, 2, 3. Let's talk about Aaron Donald. Everybody loves Aaron Donald. He's probably going to be the actual defensive player of the year. Played 16 games again this year. One thing to note about his season this year, number 6 in tackles for loss. He's usually up there in the top. The last 2 years, he's been the top. He's averaged about 20 through his career. Only 14 this year. Note a couple of things I want to note quickly on Aaron Donald. 14 tackles for loss. He's amazing. He's great. We all pay homage, right? Mm-hmm. In the same breath, Max Crosby, quote unquote, sucks. 14 tackles for loss. In the same breath, JJ Watt is old and busted. Played 16 games, 14 tackles for loss. Neither of them will be defensive player of the year, but I just wanted to point that out while I had this up here. Guys, what do you think about Aaron Donald? 29 defensive tackle 1. And do you guys think he's going to keep up this kind of production? 2-3 more years?
Nate, I'll let you take that one.
I mean, it's hard to put something past. To ever doubt a man that can bench press close to 600 pounds is probably a bad first step to take. It's not a great bet to take. And amongst defensive linemen, like you were saying, he's led the league in tackles for a loss 3 years in a row of true defensive lineman, not the edge linebacker hybrid. And he consistently gets back there. At some point, you have to think the double, triple, quadruple teams that he faces on a year in, year out basis will eventually take its toll. He's got 3 more years on that contract there. So I don't envision a situation where, me personally, I don't see how they're going to build that defense around Aaron Donald any stronger than where they're at right now. That's my concern, is the Rams have not been I'd say forward thinking with trying to build a defense around anything short of that. I mean, shit, they don't even know what they're going to do with Jared Goff.
They have not been forward thinking at all.
No, I disagree. I think they have been forward thinking. I just don't agree with their forward thinking. They're investing on their defensive backs. You have guys like Troy Hill becoming, they're taking away the back end and hopefully letting Aaron Donald take advantage of these matchups. The only problem is, look, how old is he? He's
only like 28. He's not as old as you think. You think he's real old, 29.
Yeah, but if they keep on this trajectory where they're trying to take away everything, in the intermediate range and then in the back end, like eventually he's going to start losing these one-on-one matchups. And then who do you have on the edges?
You notice though, these other guys win. You saw, I don't know, Leonard Floyd. You guys saw him pop this year. He popped this year, legit popped. That's because he was playing next to Aaron Donald. Look at Dante Fowler last year. He popped big time. I mean, total mirage. I mean, dude was DOA all season for me. That was my 2 biggest misses of this last year was Dante Fowler and Robert Quinn. Man, Dante Fowler, they both kind of came into the season nicked up, but Dante Fowler, I should have been a little bit more cautious because I told myself Grady Jarrett is 90% of Aaron Donald, which I'm sure everyone out there is like, Jordan's an idiot, which you probably are right. Because I was wrong. He's not 90% of Aaron Donald. And I don't think Dante Fowler was even 40% of what he was last year. So
Robert Quinn, though, such a bad.
Tough year for him. Yeah. He was hurt too, though. There's the thing. Both those guys, ankle and knee, both of them were hurt coming into the season. So, I mean, I'm going to bring that up because I rode hard for him coming into the season. I'm going to take my outs, but it was a real thing. And they're going to be dirt cheap this next year. And if you do go zero DL, these are the kind of guys you want to pick up. Guys who were hot 2-3 years ago, sunk down this year. I mean, look at Leonard Williams, who we're going to get to in just a second. But I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about Aaron Donald. I mean, people are like, oh, he's so underrated, but he gets talked about ad nauseum everywhere. People just love him. So any final thoughts before we move to another guy who I really am looking forward to talking to or about?
No, I'm good.
All right, well, let's move on down the list. Jason Pierre-Paul, ladies and gentlemen, coming in at number 4. I got to toot my horn here on this one. Coming in the season on our, our studs and one of our shows where it was we were against the ADP. Anyway, in Fantasy Pros, he was like defensive line player 29 coming into this season. And I was just like, yo, that's way whack. I was like, that's not right. He was like in my top 15 pretty heavily. And I was like, this is nuts, because on a game per game basis last year, he did exactly, he scored like 2 points less than Myles Garrett, who also played 10 games last year. And I was like, everybody's got Myles Garrett in the top 3 and Jason Pierre-Paul down here at number 10 or 30. So I, kind of said, watch out for Jason Pierre-Paul. He could have a good season. Wasn't his best season necessarily in the sack department, but he did have a career year in a couple of things. Let me pull up this little graphic I have here. Where's my man JPP at? 21 total impact plays. His 11th season in the NFL. 4 forced fumbles, which was a career year for him. And that's saying something because he's been in the league for a while. 2 interceptions. That was another career best for him. 9.5 sacks, didn't even get 10 sacks. And that's something I really want to, we're going all off the rails. I want to point this out. You don't have to have 10 sacks to be a top defensive line player. Quickly, I'm going to come right back to this, but let's look at this list. Jason Pierre-Paul, 9.5 sacks. DeForest Buckner, 5. He only had 9 sacks. Leonard Williams, right below him, I think he had 11. Myles Garrett, I believe, had 10. Monte Sweat, 8, only had 9 sacks. J.J. Watt only had 4 sacks. He was a top 10 defensive lineman. Harold Landry only had 5 sacks. Brian Burns only had a handful of sacks. You don't have to be a sack master in IDP 1-2-3 scoring to do 2 things. 1, be good, and 2, get points. Look at these points: 307, 233, 225. So anyway, back to it. Impact plays matter. How did he get here? He had 21 impact plays. Like I said, the 4 forced fumbles. He had 7 tackles for loss. Not even a huge tackle for loss guy this season. But you saw what he did this last week against Aaron Rodgers. I love me some JPP. And another quick aside here, 31 years old this year. We were just talking about Aaron Donald. He's 2 years older than Aaron Donald, finished with like, what was that, a point or 2 less than Aaron Donald here? Half a point less than Aaron Donald, basically. A point less than Aaron Donald. J.J. Watt is younger than him. So we, in our heads, we have this thing where it's like, oh, this guy's old, he's busted. Cameron Jordan's going to be one of those guys. Carlos Dunlap's going to be like, these older IDP assets can produce top-tier seasons. Jason Pierre-Paul, being the nominal, best man to embody that this season. But what do you guys think about him next year? And what do you think about him going to win that Super Bowl with Tom Brady?
It is amazing to think that this guy was on the Giants' Super Bowl victories back in the 2000s. Like, and you look at where he's playing now, after the fireworks injury, after all the years he's been in the league, this guy is still turning it up. He was playing great towards the back end of the season last year. Like you just said, he was terrorizing Aaron Rodgers this year. The pressures is what really amazes me, that he's still able to draw those pressures. But that being said, he's very good. But that being said, that's a testament to Tampa's defensive line as a whole. Like you had mentioned, and Ndamukong Suh's there. He's playing good. He's drawing away attention. We go back again to the edge rusher position. He qualifies as an edge rusher. We take, the top 12 scoring defensive linemen in total points, and you rearrange them by fantasy points per game. He's number 6. Like, however you slice it, whether it's the fantasy points per game, which tells you the consistency of how well that player is performing, or the total points, which is their total output, however you slice it, he played lights out this past year. I don't know if this is something that you can expect year in and year out, but chances are with Jason Pierre-Paul, I know you said you were kind of high on him. In one league, I found him on the waiver wire, and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let me just see what happens. And you know what? It paid off.
I was telling that story. I did a short show on Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel covering the same thing, top 12 linebackers or the defensive line players. And I mentioned that I'm in a $100 buy-in league. I was in it over the summer. One of my buddies dropped Jason Pierre-Paul, and my other buddy picked him up. He picked up a top 3 positional player on the waiver wire. Why? Because he's an old IDP player. IDP Army, I beg of you, do not be that guy in your league. I don't want that for you. Don't do that. Okay. He's old. Just ride him into the sunset. He's elite. Okay. I'm talking about JJ Watt right now. This is a JJ Watt tweet.
He's the Bobby Wagner of defensive linemen.
Yeah. And again, he's top 3. I cannot stress this enough. And he does not have double-digit sacks. Okay. Get this binary bullshit out of your mind where everything is sacks and tackles. There's so much more going on defense that can be scored and weighted to make this matter. And you know what Jason Pierre-Paul did this year because he had big plays. He had a couple interceptions, you know. So
it should be 4 years in a row for him. If you look back, I mean, last year per game basis, that'd be 4 straight years of 220 IDP 1-2-3 point scoring, which would have put him in that, you know, this LB1, DL1 hybrid range, top 10 actually for each one of those 4 years. And I promise you, none of those years he was drafted anywhere close, year over year. So, I mean,
to our previous conversation, it speaks to the fact that he was on waivers in my league, speaks to the fact that IDP content creators are letting people down.
So, talking about next year, you two. What about Shaq Barrett?
Oh, well, we're gonna Shaq Barrett's on this list too, so we'll slide on down to him in a second.
But I mean, the impending free agency of Shaq Barrett potential. What if 2 scenarios?
I'm still taking the talent. I mean, I think JPP is good for another 9 sacks, and I think the auxiliary stats, the impact plays will be there still. So maybe there'll be more, maybe there'll be a couple less, but I don't think he's going to necessarily be too overly hurt because Shaq Barrett's not there. Because I mean, he's a guy, he's been successful long before Shaq Barrett was on the team. Sure. So,
all right.
That's my kind of
take I do disagree with you on Cameron Jordan. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you know, Cameron Jordan still got.
I don't really like him either.
I'm off that.
I don't like him. No, I'm not a Saints fan. I appreciate Cameron Jordan as a person. He actually, I tweeted something about him last April and he DM'd me.
No kidding.
I fucked it up. And he was like, hey, this is wrong. And I was like, oh shit, I'm sorry. He didn't respond after that, but he looked at it. I'm just saying, buy the dip. I mean, stonks. That's the big theme of the week. Buy the dip. These old guys, he's coming off a bad season. I'm not saying pay for Cameron Jordan. Don't pay for Cameron Jordan.
That's
when some jackwagon drops him like the jackwagon dropped Jason Pierre-Paul. That's where you strike.
Right.
That's how you win your league. If they buy
value.
Yep. All right, guys, we are sluggish tonight. So let's I'm going to jump through these next 2 guys. DeForest Buckner comes in at number 5, played 15 games, his first season with the Indianapolis Colts, 5th year in the league, 219 IDP 1-3 points, 17 impact plays. He was one of my guys coming into last season. I've been said on this show, I would trade DeForest Buckner straight across. I would trade Aaron Donald straight across for DeForest Buckner. Why did I do that? He's 3 or 4 years younger than him, I believe. He's only 2 years younger than him. But the tackle floor is the big difference between these two. Aaron Donald puts up about 40, 45 tackles a year. That's not a very safe floor for a defensive line player. So you really need those sacks to come through. Aaron Donald is usually good for about 10 sacks, but sacks come in bunches. He had 4 in one game this year, and he had like 10 all season. And, they were against Alex Smith. I also want to note that a quarter of his sacks, or third of them, came against Alex Smith, a shell-shocked Alex Smith. So when you give him that Defensive Player of the Year award, remember that, whoever gives it to him. Okay? Anyway, back on my bullshit. But he had 9.5 sacks his first season with the Colts. That's awesome. But he really, his tackle threshold's a lot higher. He puts up around 60, 65 a season. That's really, really consistent production from the defensive line spot. He's not a huge impact player, but I mean, again, what I say, 17? That's not bad, and if you can get him and you could get him this year late in drafts because he's defensive tackle and he's finished in top 5. What do you guys think about him going forward? He's been worth a first round pick to 2 different teams now. I think he's a bit underrated, but share your thoughts.
Do the Colts still have excellent linebackers that can, get after the passer? He's going to be fine.
Amen.
Yeah. 2 of his worst weeks the entire season were when Darius Leonard really wasn't even on the field. So is there a correlation between the two? It's hard to say there shouldn't be, or there can't be, just presence.
That's a game theory thing that I'm going to talk about a lot more this season is the unit. So we're talking about these guys right now. Bring it up. DeForest Buckner was a top 12 guy. Darius Leonard was a top 12 guy. Kari Willis was like a top 25 guy, but these guys on good defenses all end up in the top. We have Shaq Barrett on this list. Devin White was a top guy. Jason Pierre-Paul was a top guy. Disruptive defenses create turnover opportunities, which allow their teammates to make impact plays. So there is something to that. Justin Houston's success begats DeForest Buckner's success, which begats Darius Leonard's success. An example of that, a guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit, Monte Sweat. He had 6 batted passes this season, right? 3 of those directly led to interceptions. One of them was by Deron Payne. One of them was himself, which he took back into the end zone for a touchdown. And another one was to John Bostic. Success begets success on defenses. So I'm a big proponent of, I like stacking defensive players on the same teams. People are like, oh, they won't get the same tackle. I could give up about a tackle. All right, get out of here with that. There's enough to go around. If he's going to get a tackle, he'll get a tackle. I'm here for the other stuff. But love me some DeForest Buckner. Let's keep it moving. Let's go. Leonard Williams, this was a shocker. 6th season, New York Jets, 16 games played, 219 IDP 123 points. 16 impact plays. This guy had 11 sacks this season after having, I believe, only like 14 his other 6 years in the league or something like that. Are we calling BS on this? Are we calling smoke? Or how do you guys feel about this? I think it could be a chance for him to rejuvenate his career, but I don't have an overly strong take because I was so off of Leonard Williams before this year. I really need to do a little bit more research before I super duper comment, but 14 tackles for loss is big. 11 and a half sacks. I mean, that's big. And he had 30 quarterback hits. I mean, that's real.
I want to say it was week number 5 or 6 when it felt like every week that I was doing my waiver wire articles over at Fantasy and Frames, as that Leonard Williams' name kept creeping up into a widely under rostered and overly productive, I'd say, numbers as a whole. And I think it was week 17. If you put the bow on the season, I'm not trying to take that 1 week and eliminate the entire season, but a 3-sack week 17 does skew the overall numbers a little bit. He's still probably in the top 20, but it does add a little bit.
No, it does.
Remember
You're right.
When you're going into next year's draft and you see his totals at the end of the season, remember that 3-sack game in week 17 when nobody really cares to play is probably going to inflate his value just a bit. Jorge?
Not to mention, you look at the fantasy points scored, like he's got some single-digit performances in there, and they're a little bit more than I feel comfortable with. Look, I think he was a product of volume and opportunity. That Giants offense was not on the field that often, therefore he was on the field. Therefore, by association, the more you're on the field, the more you're able to make plays. I believe he's a free agent this year. If he goes somewhere on a good offense, I don't think you're going to see the same production that you saw here in New York because I don't think the opportunity is going to be there. It really depends where he goes. If he goes to another bad team, then sure, yeah, I could potentially see that. But again, the big boomer bust play, I'm not on the bandwagon for this year.
He's just a guy for me, but again, the 30 quarterback hits really is kind of catching my eye here. And 14 tackles for loss, that's the same number as Defensive Player of the Year Aaron Donald. So, I mean, who am I to say that doesn't really matter? Don't read the box score. It doesn't mean anything. It's all about advanced metrics that no one can see. They're unchartable. All right. I'm going to do a quick little read thing here. Before we move on, remind you guys, thumbs up, like, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. IDP content, Dynasty content. Support the IDP Army via Patreon, patreon.com/the IDP Army, or you can donate directly through Anchor. Appreciate that. I got some cool stuff coming for the Patreons coming up soon, like some really cool stuff I've been working on. But if you want to find out about that, you know where I be. Let's move on to number 7, Myles Garrett's 4th season with the Cleveland Browns. Had more points this season than Leonard Williams. 14 games played, 215 for IDP 123, 18 impact plays. Asterisk that for a second. 12 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 10 tackles for loss. As I've been doing some research on Myles Garrett, who is we all love and adore, I'm always looking for reasons to ding guys everybody likes, because I mean that's the easiest way to find your holes. You know, I mean, it's okay. Are we looking at this the right way or not? What I found when I've looked at Myles Garrett is He's not a super duper impact player. He's 18, 20. That's good. That's not elite. I mean, again, TJ Watt had 33. Same number of years in the league. That concerns me. The other thing that I've noticed about Myles Garrett is his tackle numbers are pretty low. I brought this up on the Dynasty Nerd show the other day. You know, when you get up to a Joey Bosa or Danielle Hunter type player, one of the things you like about them, even though they aren't really huge disruptors, they don't get a lot of forced fumbles and pass deflections between the two of them. They do get a boatload of tackles for loss, and they get a boatload of tackles. They're usually floating up around 65, 70 total tackles. For a defensive line player, that's awesome. Looking at Myles Garrett here, and this is his most career tackles ever, 48. He's 30, 29, 44, 31. The floor is a lot lower for Myles Garrett than I think people want to admit, and I think the ceiling's not as high as we want to admit. That being said, he's still Myles Garrett. I don't think we've seen his ceiling yet. We've probably seen what his floor looks like, and his floor has still put him in the conversation as a top 3 guy on everybody's list. But another thing about Myles Garrett that hate to say it, hate to see it. He's only played one 16-game season, 9 games, 11 games his rookie year, 10 last year, 14 this year. This year I know it was COVID, so that's maybe extenuating circumstances, but the points are the points are the points, and they weren't there those 2 weeks. So what are your guys' thoughts on Myles Garrett, defensive lineman 1?
He is he is a traditionalist's defensive lineman 1. I'd rather
an elitist.
I would rather draft a linebacker 3 or 4 who could fit the bill as a defensive lineman 1 than waste a draft pick on Myles Garrett.
Boom.
Okay. All right. I'd have to say that's which side of the injury bug are you looking on? Do you think that the 14 games missed or 13 games missed is I would say a trend? Or is that something that you can kind of, maybe the sky's the limit if that's a huge if though. And that's my concern is I don't like the ifs. And I realize that it was an injury for some of those games missed. That was, it was a head injury that he didn't suffer. He gave.
I have a thought experiment.
It was a head injury to Mason Rudolph
Mason Rudolph had a head injury before he got in that game.
Well, yeah.
I have a thought. Let's have fun. Impact plays. I got my database pulled up right here. Okay. Patreons, you'll know what that is soon. Darius Leonard, these are his impact plays the last 3 years. 22, 27, 36. That's what you want from a top guy. Jamal Adams, impact plays last 3 years. 25, 33, 32. That's what I want. Myles Garrett, impact plays, career, 18, 14, 22, 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something about investing an early pick as your deal 1 kind of does not sound right.
There's a long discussion to be had there where I'll be called a fool, but I'll be telling my people to pass on some Myles Garrett this year at cost.
Now, that being said, if you're in a league that doesn't have edge rushers or doesn't have dual eligibility, then that's where you pay up for somebody like this. Same
conversation. Nick Bosa, rookie last year, 22 impact plays. As a rookie, Nick Bosa had the same ceiling in impact plays as Myles Garrett's best year. And again, this is where having standards, having things we can all look at and say, oh, wow, like this is what he looked like compared to that is so important, because with no context, I wouldn't even think my default would just be Myles Garrett. Oh, he's so amazing. But as I look into him more and more and more, and as I start in my head, I have player archetypes and I have tags. I have like little tags in my head. I label guys, this guy or is this kind of player. I call them bread and butter linebackers. I have disruptors. I have, tackle monsters, sack savages. Like I kind of categorize these guys in my head. And when I think of Myles Garrett, he's not, the tags are not as many and as positive as some other guys. Let's put it that way, that are generally in that upper echelon kind of conversation as an IDP player. So again, it's something that, I'm sure I'll probably look like an idiot saying it, but just take TJ Watt instead if you can. And if you have to pass on Myles Garrett, take somebody like this, number 8 on the list. Any closing thoughts on Myles Garrett before we move to Monte Sweat, somebody that I am so bullish on, it's unreal.
Nope. Let me ask you, I'll give you guys a question. It's not even a statement, more so. You can get 16 full games. You're getting 16 games out of Joey Bosa or Myles Garrett. Who do you take?
I'm taking Joey Bosa.
I'm taking Joey Bosa if Derwin James is healthy. Because at least I know Derwin James will crowd the line of scrimmage, will get closer to the box.
No, I'm changing my answer.
I don't like it if Derwin James, because he hasn't been the model of consistency. I don't see anybody, let me put it another way, opposite of Joey Bosa that can really draw attention. People are going to talk about Jared Tillery and how he had like an okay, no. He had a couple of games, depending on what you're looking at. I think one-on-one matchups, I think Garrett has it over Bosa.
I'm gonna take Garrett over Bosa. 16 games played. I'm with Jorge here. I'm gonna go Garrett. I think he just, I'm looking here at the impact plays again. That's what I'm always looking at, is the auxiliary stats, because Joey Bosa, I mean, his ceiling and sacks for a season, I think, is 11.5. So, I mean, again, I always, what's his known ceiling? 70 and 11. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so what's Myles Garrett's, ceiling? We've seen him get 12, 14 sacks, I think. I got it right here. I don't know why I'm saying I think. 13.5 in 16 games. So we already know his ceiling in the sack department is higher. And then I'm assuming we haven't seen his best season, whereas I have legitimate concerns that we may have seen some of Joey Bosa's best work. Maybe not, but I like what. Go ahead.
I'm kind of rambling. And in his 2 16-game seasons, he's put up 11.5 and 12.5. So I think that's kind of the basis. What do you say, 12? I think 12 sacks is probably your, I don't want to call it a ceiling, but I'm going to call it a ceiling. And if you use, I hate to prorate numbers. That's the worst thing that I get in trouble with doing. I'm like, well, look, if he had played the entire season, he would have put up the second most points. Well, yeah, if he had the same, that, like Jorge and I were talking about, that 3-sack game, the same thing I'm busting Leonard Williams for, I'm giving credit to Joey Bosa. Probably not fair.
Yeah. It's, and it's an IDP players. It's a tough discussion because it's easy to just have kind of a locked and loaded reply, and and nobody really knows if you're right or wrong in many regards, and I try, it's important to take a thoughtful approach. And I love that question, Garrett or Joey Bosa. And honestly, I'm going to probably be wrestling with that for a while now, because I'm kind of annoyed that I don't have a stronger take for one or the other, because I started Bosa and then I changed to Garrett, and that upsets me. So I need to work on me, and that's going to be a big part of that. But great question there. Let's get to number 8. Guy said I love, talked about him briefly earlier. Monte Sweat, second season, Washington football team, played 16 games, 208.5 points, 22 impact plays. Oh, look, same ceiling as Myles Garrett has in impact plays. 9 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 6 pass deflections, which I said earlier, 3 of them directly led to interceptions. One of them was his own touchdown interception. Scored more points than Chase Young. If you look at Monte Sweat's second year this year, and you look at Joey Bosa's rookie year, they're almost identical. And it's not talked about enough. I think, they're a little different in how they got there. Definitely more pass deflections on Monte Sweat's part, but that's something I like. Like, I like that he does that. I like that there are points available in other spots. What do you guys think about Monte Sweat? And here, we're going ham tonight. What do you think about Monte Sweat versus Chase Young in IDP? As far as value, upside, who do you want, and why?
So we were actually just talking about this before we hopped on with you, as far as what are our thoughts here with Chase Young and Monte Sweat. Better value, Monte Sweat. As long as Chase Young's there applying pressures, the offensive linemen are going to be keying on him left and right. What you get from Monte Sweat is not so much just, he had 9 sacks and 12 tackles for a loss, and I get it, the impact plays. But what really excites me about Monte Sweat is going back to the passes defense. Like, this guy, he can do it all over. He's, again, one of those Swiss Army knives that if he's not getting you the fantasy points from one statistical category, he's going to compensate in another if he has that person on the other side drawing attention away from him. If Chase Young wasn't on Washington, I'd be a little bit concerned. That being said, this was his second year. They moved Washington. They moved up last year or the year before in the draft to get him as a first-round pick. They obviously saw the talent there. Granted, different coaching regimes, but still, he's a very talented player. He was graded as a first-round pick coming out of college. This is one of those situations where, you know what, it's better to really go for the value of Monte Sweat. You're really taking a gamble, especially like in dynasty leagues. Like for me, it would be easier to draft him in a dynasty league than it would be in a redraft league. Because redraft, I want the immediate returns. Monte Sweat, I know I have a feeling. I shouldn't say I know for a fact. I have a feeling in the next couple of years, you're going to see his play escalate even higher as Chase Young's escalates higher. As far as, am I expecting this same level of production, top 8 fantasy point production next year? I'm not so sure about that. It's really Chase Young dependent for me.
Fair.
Yeah. I think that, again, I'm going to go with the first thing you said, Jorge. I'm going to see that 2-round. I'm making these numbers up. I have no clue how many round difference they're going to go between at the end of the day, but I think that we all can agree. I'm assuming we all can agree that when the first rankings come out for next year, or the first draft is had during real season, Chase Young's going to go ahead of Monte Sweat in 99 out of 100 drafts. Maybe the only one that he doesn't is one that, like you maybe mentioned. I don't even think that. I don't know. I can't think of a situation. Name value alone is going to inflate Chase Young so much more than Monte Sweat.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, and it's, there's a couple elements to that too. We've seen 2 years of Monte Sweat, so it's like, well, we've seen, we need that dopamine hit. We need the likes. I need more. Chase Young, give it to me. So there's less we know. There's more mystery, more intrigue to Chase Young. So yeah, you're probably right. I'm gonna take the value, like you said, and take Monte Sweat. Although I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm gonna be hammering home to the IDP Army all offseason to get Monte Sweat. So I'm gonna try to drive that stock up, pump and dump.
Great. Correct.
Interesting way of putting that. Yeah, no, actually, that's good. Now, is that your answer for both redraft and dynasty, or just dynasty?
That's both. I mean, they're only a year apart age-wise, so.
No. Okay. Yeah.
So, I'm going to take the value of Monte Sweat every time. I have no problem having both of them. I mean, if there's a point in the draft where I'm like, shit, I'm going to take Chase Young, and a round goes around, I'm like, shit, I'm going to take Monte Sweat. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all. You can never have too many good players on your team. That's something else I don't understand in IDP is like why guys get all high and mighty about digging through the garbage for some guy who's going to be relevant for a day. Like, why don't you just draft awesome players and play them every week and like have fun? Like why do we have to stream a 3rd round defensive tackle? I don't want to do that. I just want Mac to get a bunch of sacks and I want to feel something. Like
I think there's a misunderstanding with IDP. I think that the average player, even to the quasi experience, feels that there's turnover every week at linebacker. Oh no, look, I'll just get another linebacker. He'll fill in that. Look, every week you can find one. You're correct. There's one every week.
Thank you.
One.
And there's 12 guys on your
12
team.
guys, and there's 36 linebackers you're playing, and there's bye weeks, and every now and then you can't get. Yes, you look at any position. Cameron Curls of the world don't.
They're on one guy's team. One guy gets Cameron Curl. What happens to the other 11 guys who are so fucking smart streaming every position?
Yeah, they're taking Mike Hilton after the first 5 weeks, and then exactly. Mike Hilton. That's
the thing that bothers me. I hear a lot of IDP people like, "Oh, I just stream this pitch, stream that." I'm like, why? Why are you? That's so much roster management. Like, anxiety. Like, I want set and forget guys. I want TJ Watt, Jamal Adams, Blake Martinez. I don't want to fuck with that shit. I don't want to dig through the trash for 20 points. Okay. Exactly. Why? I'm in 16, 17, 18, 19 league. I want to know, oh yeah, I'm going to go blow the brakes off that guy. Oh yeah, I'm going to blow the brake. I don't be like, oh my gosh, I got to go. I hope Daniel Sorensen's out there still. Oh God. Oh God, I got me a piece of Juan Thornhill this week. I don't want to live that life. And you shouldn't either. You should want better things for yourself and your friends in your league. Okay.
Things.
The epitome of every waiver wire article is how do I force feed these 4 shitty names and 2 good ones and just not regurgitate the same ones. It's
every week.
Every week it could be the same ones. It could be for the first 5 weeks. Hey, Jeremy Chen, who I hype way before, if you had listened and followed, you'd have had him. You wouldn't have to come in week 6 to realize, wow, he's really that good. Or middle of the season, X, Y, and Z. Robert Spillane, like you talked about earlier.
And people don't value what they have, too. I'll reference that league we were in. You guys saw that guy drop Eric Wilson like 4 weeks into the season. I picked his ass up, rode to a championship. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Why? Why would you drop a top 5 linebacker on his bye week? Because I could stream the position. Don't do that, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's move to JJ Watt, the old man himself. This is actually going to be a really fun one because, again, like I said, only what do you have? 4 sacks this season, I believe. 5 sacks for JJ Watt. He was double teamed a boatload. 26 impact plays. That's why I contextualize. 26 impact plays, 4 sacks. Oh, JJ Watt had a terrible season. He's the worst. Blah blah blah. He's losing a step. No, he had 26 impact plays. He had 14 tackles for loss, same as you're going to give the defensive player of the year. He had a boatload of pass deflections, 7. He has a bunch every year. He had a touchdown. He had an interception. Played 16 games. Wasn't hurt a single snap. I mean, I'm yelling. I apologize. There's no need for that. But I'm just worked up because JJ Watt was another guy coming to the season. Everybody's like, oh, JJ Watt, he's always hurt. Just forget it. I mean, it's just like it's reductive. We can't be so reductive in IDP. We have to actually give people good advice. He finished top 10. You should have seen it coming. He's JJ Watt. It's not that hard. Taking it from a man, Ray GQ. Football doesn't have to be that hard. Draft the good players. They're going to score points. Only 5 sacks, still a major disruptor, finished in the top 10. What do you guys got to tell me about TJ Watt or JJ Watt, who is a year younger than Jason Pierre-Paul?
You said it. The injury history is going to scare off a lot of people. That just goes with the territory that most people are looking at mainstream names and they're like, oh, I remember he tore his elbow ligaments, or oh, he tore his ACL. He hasn't played a full 16 like you were alluding to. That's going to scare a lot of people off, and a lot of people are going to look past are not going to look at the numbers and look at the disruptions and the impact plays like you're talking about. He had a really, really good year this year. Has that been consistently the case the past few seasons versus early on in his career? I don't have the numbers in front of me. I would like to say no, just because the lack of what's the best ability? Availability.
He set the bar so incredibly high his first few seasons. It's almost nauseating to look at the numbers that he did. I ran some of his numbers through my impact play system last week. Let me see if I can pull up. He had I mean, like this year, the leader in impact plays was like 36, and he and Levante David had a couple of seasons that I think pushed up to 50. I mean, it was just ungodly numbers they're putting up. I don't have it right in front of me. I apologize, but 39 tackles for loss. That's an impact play. He had 39 of those. That's more than the combined impact play leader this season. Okay. Mm-hmm. To contextualize JJ Watt, it's like your first line of cocaine. He was never going to be that good again. It was too good. It was too amazing. The high was too great. And you're going to keep chasing it. It's going to still be good, but it's never going to be as good as it was. And there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. It's just not going to work out every time. So the JJ Watt, he did pull off 16 games this year. I would love to see him. Houston's falling apart. He's not going to stick around. Let's be honest. I would love to see him on the Steelers. Mike Tomlin is a defensive guy. He loves TJ Watt. I have never felt more sure of anything than the fact that I'm sure TJ Watt will die in a Steelers jersey because Mike Tomlin loves him that much. And I would love to see him get the other one. He's already got the other brother there. Get the set, go win that Super Bowl next year. I think they've got what it takes.
Or Sammy Watkins' contract is gone next year. We don't have to worry about that. Granted, TJ Watt will never sign for the same amount of money that Sammy Watkins has signed. But, there's one added little thing that I got to say that's not ever chronicled, and you can't look at it as an impact player or anything else. Seth Walder does a great job of highlighting over at ESPN double teams and beat rates. And by that, I mean, you can't have impact plays if you're not shedding blockers and getting into position. He was double teamed the most of any defensive lineman in football, and he had a top 10 win rate, meaning he shut. And so
he still got
skills are there. And ultimately, we talk about the few things that go into legitimate IDP scoring, all fantasy scoring: opportunity, skill set, situation, coaching, those main things can kind of help guide what type of player you are. When the underlying skill set is as dominant as he is, I hope he gives us another couple years of healthy 16-game seasons, and it's on a team that puts him in a great position to be successful.
Amen. He was 9th this year in impact plays. If you count TJ Watt as a traditional linebacker and you give him the sacks as impact plays, he had 48. If you take him away, he only had 33 if you call him a defensive line player. I'm having a kind of an internal struggle on how exactly to categorize the sack for the defensive line player versus the linebacker player. But so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. But Roquan Smith had 33, Xavier Howard had 32, Devin White had 30, Marlon Humphreys 27, Levante David 26, and then JJ Watt had 26. So his name is up there with the elite of the elites this year on impact plays. So I mean, I got him. I drafted him as defensive line 4 in leagues this last year. People were so out on JJ Watt, it was unreal. Given the track record that he's got, it kind of doesn't make any sense. So IDP Army, we are an hour and 10 minutes in. I thank you so much for sticking around if you're still here. We're going to finish off the last 3 guys on this list, and I'm going to let these boys go. We have coming in at number 10, Harold Landry, 3rd season with the Tennessee Titans, a guy that I think is really underrated in the NFL. 16 games played, 205 points, 16 impact plays, not a super duper high number, but pretty good. 59 combined tackles. He does play a boatload of snaps, 10 of those tackles for loss, 5 pass deflections. He did have, I believe, 1 interception this year. That would be his whole 16. So his pie chart's not like super exciting. Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. It'll probably be kind of a boring pie chart. Yeah, his pie chart, I'm going to open that up for you guys. If you're on the YouTubes, you should be. His pie chart, as you can see, it's a little bit, a little less of the more disruptive kind of forced fumbles and all that. It's a little bit more binary. But what do you guys think about him going forward? Referencing that chart you mentioned earlier, I saw he's a little bit higher up on that x-axis than people would probably have thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, I think underrated is probably the absolute word to put next to his name, because you're going to snag him. So I think 2 to 3 rounds later than he ever should go. If you look back at 2019, he was 13th overall in the IDP 1-2-3 scoring. So he's been top 15 back-to-back years. Mm-hmm. He's in a position to do so. I think Tennessee would definitely being a defensive-minded team for the most part and run heavy. I don't know if there's a direct correlation between run heavy teams and IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Maybe I should look into that and see how that trend. I know Jorge's going to get ready to beat me up and tell me it's a Ryan Tannehill pass heavy team, not a run team.
Damn right I am. Hashtag Team Tannehill.
Team Tannehill.
Amen, brother.
Look, I'm going to beat this into the ground hopefully tonight. Dual eligibility, fantasy scoring. He's a top 10 ranked defensive lineman. He's an LB4 when you talk about just looking at linebackers. You can get so much value with these dual eligibility linebackers in the later rounds of your draft that have DL1 upside. It is remarkable. I wonder how much the loss of Jayon Brown, I know we're talking about 2 different type of schemes here in terms of player roles, but I wonder how much of that really helped Harold Landry this season, or potentially hurt him going forward. The tackle numbers are there, but I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about that. But I think Nate is right. He does have value. He has value.
Yeah, people will point to the fact that he plays a lot of snaps, and I'm like, oh, it's just because he's playing the snaps. That's fine, but I mean, like you just said, that's what we want, right? So why would we knock him for that? And then we look at this other guys who don't play a lot of snaps, and we say, oh, he doesn't play enough snaps. He's too efficient. Who do I want? Do I want the guy with the snaps, or I want the super efficient guy? I mean, so quit pissing on my head, telling me it's raining. I mean, just tell me who's the good guy to have. Like you said, he's underrated. He does more things. 5.5 sacks. He finishes in the top 10 as number 10. It's his second year finishing pretty high. I don't remember exactly where he finished last year, but it was top 15, like you said, 2 years in a row. And he's just perennially underrated. And even as a linebacker, I mean, you have an IDP flex spot, right? Like, how good does it feel to put a guy who's a low end DL1 into an IDP flex spot? That's what you're looking for, right? Maybe I'll catch a boom week. So, I mean, even if you don't have to play him as a DL, if you have a couple of real heavy hitters, you still are trying to find ways to plug Harold Landry into your lineup, whether you want to admit it or not. So, and as far as Jayon Brown, like you said, they're playing different roles. I don't know how much they really affect each other per se, because I mean they had that other guy come out and play for Brown, that other linebacker. I'm sure you wrote about him in your waiver wire articles, Nate. So I mean somebody comes in and is still doing that same thing. I mean the same number of players are still on the field, different guys. I mean, does it matter or not? I don't know. I try not to get too far into that because I feel like that's where we get caught up in narratives, and I think that's one of the big. That's something I think the IDP community just in general gets a little bit too carried away with, is the narrative. It's just like this, one of the biggest narratives last offseason that I hated, and I'm digressing again, but was that the Eagles were going to be good. Like that was a set in stone thing last summer. No one will ever say they said this, but there were so many people that said the Eagles are going to be good. They're going to be a good football team this year. And then they're like, oh, there are injuries. Who are these guys that got injured anyway? Well, the offensive line. So what? All they were doing was hiding the fact that you don't have a quarterback. Okay. And who's hiding the fact that you don't have any wide receivers? The team was bad from the jump. But no, it's this narrative that one guy with a blue check mark and his buddies on this TV and everybody says it. So we all have to look like, well, he said it. He's right. So I'm right. And narratives get carried away in fantasy football a little too much. And I like to push back on them a little bit because I don't mind if people hurl shit at me. I got really thick skin, which is why I'm fine saying some of the things I say, because I don't mind engaging people either. I think I'm a big iron sharpens iron guy. Like, I want you to, if you don't like what I say, I like that you have something to say back. Let's engage. Like, teach me if I'm wrong. I would love to learn or hear your point of view. I'm willing to hear it, but if you're just talking dumb shit, I mean, I'm not going to bow down and be like, oh, I respect your opinion either. I'm like, you're saying dumb shit. And you're saying it on my timeline. So stop. All right, let's go to number 11, Brian Burns, second season, Carolina Panthers. Here's where we're getting some of the younger guys. A lot of earlier guys were a little bit older. We got Brian Burns, Harold Landry, Monte Sweat down here towards the bottom of this list, but these guys are up and comers. Brian Burns, 15 games played, 205 points, only 15 impact plays. That does bother me. His season was eerily similar to Harold Landry's, 16 impact plays for Landry, 15 for Burns, 58 combined tackles for Brian Burns, 59 combined tackles for Harold Landry. So it's funny that people are just like, people love Brian Burns. I mean, I don't have to argue about that, but people are like, oh, Harold Landry sucks. So it's interesting to me that, you put them right next to each other. It's not really much different. It's like when Pam gives Creed that picture of the office. She's like, corporate needs you find the difference between these two pictures. And it's like, they're the same. 9 sacks, though. That is the difference. Brian Burns did get home more. I think he played a few less snaps, but we all will also just admit he's a better pure pass rusher, too. So that's to be expected. So, what are your thoughts on Brian Burns going forward? I really like the situation. I love the youth movement with the Carolina Panthers defense, especially. And he's an emerging leader on that team. And, he plays with attitude.
Mm-hmm. I mean, go ahead, Jorge.
I was just going to say, you hit the nail right on the head, the youth movement at defense. Look, last year they spent their entire draft all on defense. Assuming like 80% of those players pan out, like that is a huge investment on the defensive side of the ball. And look what he's done with what he has so far surrounding him. Like if these rookies really pan out and there's a good development there, you could definitely see him taking the next few steps there. Again, great value pick that you can find later on in your fantasy football drafts to fill in this role. I'm a believer in Brian Burns. I think he has a lot of upside coming up this season and seasons to come.
Yeah. Again, piggybacking off exactly what you two said, Derek Brown, Jeremy Chin, the names of the defensive just potential stars that they had just from last year's draft is incredible. Burns did have a little bit of a benefit in that the big plays when he came, produced were monsters. So like on over half of his games where he had a sack, he had a forced fumble in the same game too. So not that has any bearing on anything whatsoever, but
good. I like that.
It's true. So there's multiple games, 3 games in a row. He had a sack, he had a forced fumble with that, couple multi-sack games. But again, underlying skill set and just ability, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to have enough, pressures and be able to shed. But I want to see that next year, what he does if he gets doubled. But I don't know if he's going to get doubled. There's too many options to have to do that. So
yeah. Jeremy Chin was a pretty effective pass rusher as well, low key.
Yeah, he overall, the one person on that entire defense that took a step backwards and wasn't even bad step backwards, just because the total number of assisted to solo kind of normalized a little bit or got worse, was Shaq Thompson. And that sucked because I love Shaq Thompson going in, but I didn't expect the impact that the other guys were going to have on him. And we'll talk about him, linebacker story down the line.
What do you got, Jorge? Or you already said what you thought about Brian Burns, right? Any parting thoughts?
It's gonna be interesting to see what it is in, his next season. That's all.
Yeah, I think he's just going to evolve and get better. He's one of those young pass rushers. I really like him and Monte Sweat a lot. All right, number 12, Shaq Barrett comes in, 7th season in the league, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was not DL eligible last season on Sleeper, but this season he was. For whatever reason, they did change his eligibility. If he was DL eligible last year, he would have ended up being the number 1 overall DL player. This year, he finishes number 12, still a top 12 guy. I see a bunch of people entering the chat. I don't know what is going on, but appreciate y'all. Follow, like, subscribe. We're out here doing our thing. IDP Army represent. Love you. But he came back down to earth this year in the box score. The pressures were still sky high. He was still making impact plays. Only 17, but still we've talked about that's a decent number. And you saw the impact he made this last week against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it matters to have a good pass rusher. And a lot of people were like, Shaq Barrett, he's not going to have 20 sacks this year. I don't remember anyone saying he was going to have 20 sacks this year. I don't know why so many people went out of their way to say, Shaq Barrett's going to not going to have 20 sacks again. Nobody said he was going to. So he didn't, but he still finished in the top 12 at defensive line. He still had a really good season overall for the edge position, and he made himself a lot of money this year. He's playing in the Super Bowl. If he gets a couple of sacks on Patrick Mahomes, I can't even imagine the contract he's going to get, the gaudy contract he's going to get. Because if Tampa Bay wins, they're going to win in style. I mean, they got a bunch of big personalities. Tom Brady leading the way, Gronk. I mean, it's going to be a party. So what do you guys think about Shaq Barrett going into next year? Any parting comments on Shaquille Barrett?
Yeah, obviously he wasn't going to have that. I shouldn't say obviously, but it was highly unlikely he was going to repeat that 20 sack season like he had last year or the year before. I think the reason why he's 12 and not higher on this list, he's a victim of the quality of defensive players that are around him. And they just, he basically, everyone kind of assumed his role, whether it was the tackle volume, whether it was the sack upside,
Devin White stole so many sacks.
Yes. Like he's like one of those players that, in clutch situations, he shows up and he makes plays. And otherwise, you have the other guys. You have the Devin Whites. You have the Monte Davids. You come in. Hell, even Carlton Davis, who I'm actually a big fan of Carlton Davis is from an IDP perspective as far as scoring points is concerned. So many good players on that defense. Again, we talked about Jason Pierre-Paul earlier. Yet somehow, and this is a testament to him. Despite how good all the other ancillary players were around him, he still managed to make the top 12 in fantasy points scored. Like, that's really impressive. Like, he found a way to do it. Where he lands next year. Is he a free agent this year?
They put him on the tag.
Wherever you think they're going to tag him this year, or
they might. I don't know. I don't like getting into the that's not my thing.
Right.
I have no idea.
But look, the talent is undeniable, and his IDP value is undeniable. And again, he's in terms of looking at linebackers, just linebackers and fantasy point scoring, he's characterized as an LB forward. He could fill your DL1 spot. Again, the value is there for these players down the list.
Yeah, I'm going to just, again, I feel like it's easy to piggyback off you guys when we all share the same sentiment about what he can do, and that's that dual tag. If he loses the DL tag going into next year, he won't. You're right. I just can't see a situation where, again, as Jorge said, value, and where I've seen him going so far as of late, I have no problem sliding him in. Obviously, landing spot can dictate a little bit. But, if he's back at Tampa, the one thing, like you guys kept saying, if you look at the big four there, is each one of them had double-digit tackle for loss. We had 8 sacks, 9.5, 9. Him and Devin White both had 16 QB hits. So, I mean, imagine if just 2 or 3 of those turned into sacks where's Shaq Barrett on this list?
He's way up this list. He's
8, 7.
Oh yeah, I mean, you give him 2 sacks, he's 204. 2 sacks, I mean, that's just 12 points. That would shoot him up into almost the top 5, just like that. So, yeah, he's an underrated player. I think he kind of he didn't even get an All-Pro nod last year, which really pissed me off. But I won't get into that. But yeah, that's the top 12 defensive line players, IDP Army. I'm going to read them back to you again. Again, we got a flood of people kind of showing up here in the chat. I don't know what's going on, but I appreciate it. Top 12 defensive line players of the year were TJ Watt, Zadarius Smith, Aaron Donald, Jason Pierre-Paul, DeForest Buckner, Leonard Williams, Myles Garrett, Monte Sweat, JJ Watt, Harold Landry, Brian Burns, and Shaq Barrett. That finished out the Real Talk series for the linebackers, defensive line, defensive backs. You can go back on the YouTube channel and look at those videos. One solo myself, one with John Macri. You can go to the feeds, obviously, where you get podcasts. Those are on there as well. Before we go, if you want to leave a comment, anybody out there in the world, what do you think about bounce back candidates? So we're going to see Sam Hubbard, Yannick Ngakoue, Cameron Jordan on this list again next year. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please leave those. As for anything else from me, you guys know where I'll be. I'll be back here again next week. I'll be on the Dynasty Nerds YouTube channel. But Jorge, Nate, why don't you hit us with some realness on what y'all are going to be up to soon for the going, up for the off season, and we'll kind of roll on out of here.
So next week we're starting up our Dynasty content. We had been primarily since 2017 redraft and IDP. We're going to take that a step further, and so look for our our offensive and IDP Dynasty content starting next week. And we got so many things planned for you all, whether it's more live streams, whether it's more interaction on other social media avenues. We can't wait to interact with you all, and most importantly, not only help you win your fantasy football league, but help you become a smarter fantasy football player.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's at fantasyandframes.com is where you can find Jorge and myself. He's got Fourth and Frames podcast. If you happen to do fantasy baseball, you can check us out there as well. I do the fantasy baseball content. I know, Jordan. Hey, you gave me a soapbox.
Good. Scream, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But we would absolutely love to have you come on with us sometime. We're going to keep this movement going, man. I like structure, and I love what you're doing.
You know what it is, IDP 1, 2, 3. All right. That's it for me, IDP Army. Thank you for tuning in. Come back next week. Check out the IDPArmy.com, my website, which has 2 pages, is not in very good shape, but it will get better, I promise. Check out the Patreon, soon to have some really cool stuff over there for you. I appreciate you, IDP Army. I love you. I appreciate my guys coming on. Thank you guys, Fantasy and Frames, for joining me. Thanks for supporting IDP 1, 2, 3. It means a lot. My written work, Dynasty Nerds, all the stuff, guys. Love you. Appreciate you. Check you next week. Adios.